Serious, what's your real ghost story? My grandmother coming to me in a dream to tell me she died. I was in China at the time. When I called home, my family and girlfriend lied about it. The next night I had the same dream and called home to check in, but they lied again. I finally got my girlfriend to admit it. The dream stopped. When I got home, I was told that the last thing my grandmother said was to ask for me by name. My grandma came to me the night she passed too. I was in school and working, so I couldn't leave to visit her. My dad said it was okay and to focus on school. Couple of days later she came to me in my dream. She looked like she did when I was a kid and was wearing pajamas she always wore. She said she was leaving. In the dream I felt like I knew where she was going and understood. I told her I was going to miss her and she said she would too. Woke up and my body was giving me a ride to work and my dad calls me crying. She had passed. I told my dad my dream and he believed me. He was happy that I saw her before she left. I don't believe in ghosts, gods, or anything supernatural, but I still can't deny what happened. I can believe this. Shortly before the birth of my third child, I was super stressed about everything. Standard stuff, juggling work with decorating the nursery, praying for a healthy baby, etc. One night I had a dream that I was sitting on the stairs just outside the nursery and my long since dead grandma came walking up the stairs, sat down next to me, put her arm around me and told me that everything was going to be alright. It was so comforting and felt so real. I am as skeptical as they come, but this will always stay with me as a special moment that felt like more than just a dream. My grandma passed 7 years ago and recently came to me in my dream. We've had a stressful last year with a baby in the NICU and him having major health issues in the first months of life. Never said anything directly to me, but at one point she looked at me in my eyes and then proceeded to follow behind my 4-year-old, watching over her as she played. Woke up with tears in my eyes. Since my grandma never got to see me get married or have either of my kids, I truly believe she's watching over my kids for me. When I was around 5, my aunt got diagnosed with cancer, so my mom left me at my dad's for over a month to be able to care for her 24/7. One night, I woke up crying and asking if my mom came with my aunt. When my family questioned me, I said my aunt came to say goodbye and that she loves me and will take care of me, but did my mom come with her? I missed my aunt. 5 minutes later the phone rang and it was my mom telling us my aunt had just passed. My mom died when I was a pretty young adult. I couldn't get her to answer her phone, so I went to her house to check on her and found her body. My mom's sister and I have always been very close. When she came in town for the funeral, we decided to spend the night at my mother's for a few nights to feel closer to her and be amongst her things. We were sitting in the living room with her cat. When I found her cat was curled around her head. She loved that cat. We were talking about her life and it got a little bit deep. We were both crying and hoping she was at peace. Suddenly the cat who was sitting between us jumped up and started hissing at the fireplace. Then the flue to the fireplace slammed shut really loud and scared the shit out of us. We then heard footsteps above us in her bedroom where she died. It was scary and not comforting for us or the cat. My mom committed suicide and had been really despondent after my dad died. She was also the kind of person who never wanted anyone to feel sorry for her. I think we got too personal about her life and pissed her off. I had several other uncomfortable moments in her house while cleaning it out. My then 8-year-old son and I were packing boxes and her bedroom door slammed shut. It was a nice day, no windows or doors open. My son looked at me and asked, "Why is Granny so sad?" Posted this elsewhere recently, but my biological dad lives in a creepy old farmhouse he renovated. I was helping him build out the office late one night. He went to the bathroom and I kept plunking away. I was on the floor and set my hammer down. I felt something, a presence, and looked to where I thought someone would be. Nothing. I reached back down for my hammer and it's out of arm's reach, maybe 5 feet further than where I had set it down. I hadn't moved at all. He comes back after he's finished and I tell him what had just happened. He laughed and said, "The little girl must be playing with you." Little girl? What? He then tells me that every now and then he hears a little girl laughing and has even seen her. She's always wearing the same pair of overalls and she just kind of wanders around upstairs. I am not one to believe in paranormal experiences, but I have no explanation other than a little girl ghost just wanted to play. My dad was remodeling an old house and stuff like this would happen. He was warned of this by the owners. He surprised me by telling me he'd explain out loud what he was doing during the remodeling, so the ghosts knew he wasn't there to ruin the house, but fix things that needed fixing, replace things. The new owners love this house and want to keep it looking good, he'd say. Made him feel better. Anyway, my grandma and great-grandma and their dog moved into an old cabin. There were many stories she had about strange things that happened in the house. sinks turning on in the middle of the night, noises of footsteps in the attic, motion sensing night lights turning on when my great-grandma was asleep with the dog in another room, etc. Also, there were crosses carved above many of the doorways. When they moved in, my aunt helped with some painting and covered the crosses in the process. As they covered them, they heard noises coming from another part of the house. The next day, the crosses were all back. Coincidentally, my mom's boss's son just recently moved into the same house 15 years later, and she was telling my mom about her son's haunted house before ever being told that my grandma and great-grandma lived there. When I was about 12 during a summer, my sister, who was 5 years older than me, was out with friends after work. We shared a bedroom. I was up late, doodling in a notebook in bed, and had an older glass TV next to my bed that was turned off. At one point I looked up and saw in the reflection of the TV screen my sister walk out of our bedroom doorway and into the stairwell. When I turned around to greet her, she wasn't there. I get up and walk into the stairwell, and all of the lights are still off downstairs and in the bathroom next to our bedroom. So I think she must have ran downstairs really fast and head down myself to find no one again. At this point I am getting a little spooked and I wanted to prove myself wrong, so I went outside and her car was still gone. I sprint back inside and run back upstairs to my parents' room and wake my mom up to tell her I was pretty sure I had just seen a ghost. She was too tired to do much for it, and so I went back in my bedroom, petrified. When I thought back on it, I realized the girl was in a long sleeve dress that looked somewhat vintage, and my sister was very much a tomboy in those days, but she had blonde hair like my sister and was looking towards me while walking out of the room. I stayed awake with my light on until my actual sister got home and I felt safe to sleep. It still creeps me out a bit to think about it to this day. I don't really believe much in an afterlife, but I know I saw a young girl walking out of the door. I wasn't really tired. I hadn't been watching anything earlier in the evening to scare me, and even further wasn't scared when I first saw her because I thought it was just my sister. I can't explain it though. Never saw her or anything like it again. Your story reminded me of my own. In 5th grade I had a big sleepover like 8 other kids, and we were playing MX Unleashed on the PS2 for hours. Well, around like 2 a.m. went out into the living room. My old house was structured like a full square, so you could go in a circle and reach every room, if that makes sense. And the lights were on. Not that weird. My brother was sleeping on the couch, so clearly he forgot to turn off the lights. We got some snacks, turned off the lights, and went back to my room opposite corner of the house. From one door we hear somebody saying my name. It was a little faint, but we all heard it, obviously thinking it's my brother playing a prank. Like 3 of us went one way and others went the other way to catch him in the center. And when we met up back in the living room, he was still sleeping on the couch and the lights were on again, so we turned them off, and several of us noticed straight ahead from the living room we could see past the kitchen and into the dining room somebody walking into the room in the left corner of the house. They looked similar to my brother in figure, but he was sleeping on the couch next to us. We were too scared to go look. My brother has honestly never had friends. Hopefully that doesn't sound harsh, but he completely keeps to himself. I still have some people reach out from time to time from that party and ask if I remember that night or if they are crazy. Wasn't the only paranormal experience we had in that house. Another one when my dad became somewhat of a believer was in his 50s. My grandmother was in hospice and we received the news she had passed away. My dad and I were on the back porch hanging out talking about everything. He seemed off though. Yes, I know his mother passed, but this was different. He seemed off. I asked him about it and he said he had the strangest dream the night my grandmother died. He was in the room with her in Michigan. We live in VA. My grandmother stood up, hugged and kissed him and told him everything would be okay. She proceeded to somehow walk out of some new door in the room that led to a green pasture with other relatives that had passed. He could only recognize his grandparents. The others, he didn't know who they were, but something in his gut said they were other relatives my grandmother knew. It's crazy because now when we talk about it, he doesn't act like it's a big deal. He was just having a crazy dream that was influenced by the situation. But he dreamed it the night she passed away. It was like the other relatives and her were telling him it'll be okay. I am better off now. I used to work in a bar that wasn't exactly a jail, but temporarily held people awaiting court and sentencing. Everyone had stories about the residential ghost, who we called Sebastian. First time I saw Sebastian, I looked down the stairs while I was opening and saw some legs in black pants and smart shoes. The ceiling obscured his torso upwards. When I went downstairs to ask how he got in, he ran down the hallway and vanished. A few other staff members mentioned seeing a man in a black suit who would be in the bar after hours while you'd be cleaning, but when you'd approach or speak to him, he'd turn a corner and disappear. Sometimes after closing, you'd hear someone ringing the bells on staff members' bikes downstairs, or you'd hear a crash and the bikes would be moved to a different place. Other times, you'd see a man in black duck into the office, and by the time you'd enter he'd be gone. The clincher that convinced us all that it wasn't just a thing we all believed because we all joked about it so often was the day the new chefs came. They didn't speak much English and would leave once dinner service was over, so they never engaged in the Sebastian stories. One day, one of them asked about a man in black kept leaning on the ordering window while they were cleaning. Sebastian was pretty chill though. He never scared us or did anything mean. I think he just liked hanging out. Was visiting a friend in Chicago. She told me under no uncertain terms the ghost of a woman who lived there wasn't really fond of men staying there. I was told that I needed to make sure I closed any door behind me, lest she slammed the door behind me. Sure as shit. First night I am there, I get up to go pee in the middle of the night. I didn't close the bedroom door when I came back from the bathroom. The door slammed so hard it knocked a piece of art off the damn wall. We started hearing knocks on the sodding second floor as if someone was at the door. This followed loud banging in the basement every night. I decided to record through the night and the snowflake ornament started spinning long after all had gone to bed. There was no draft as the other ornaments didn't move. When I played it back I heard a man's voice repeatedly calling me a hoe. I still lived there. One night I woke to something settling over my face. Initially, I thought it was my bed covers, but then I realized it all felt wrong and reached up and grabbed the cloth and threw it. I reached over to turn on my bedside light and froze because of what I saw. All of my clothes, which previously had been folded neatly in a basket, were now stacked atop of me, neck to toe. The piece of cloth that was settling over my face was a pair of my son's shorts. So, of course I froze and listened for whoever was in my home. I stayed that way for about 10 minutes and heard nothing, so I got up and started to search my house. The only other person that lived with me was my 8-year-old son, and I found him fast asleep in his top bunk. I know he didn't stack those clothes because the bunk he was in was metal and very squeaky and he would have definitely made noise getting in or out. He is a pretty serious kid and I've never known him to play tricks. In any case, I felt that last piece go over my face, so he wasn't there for that. I searched the entire house and no one was there but us. I believe it was poltergeist activity. Apparently, stacking is typically what poltergeists do. I also found a random puddle of water once in the middle of the living room when no one had been home. There was no place that could have come from either. Strange stuff. My Uncle Bill died when I was 4. He and I were incredibly close. He was my favorite and I was his. I lived in Colorado but we went down to Alabama for his funeral. I am 31 now, so I don't remember him actually visiting me, but I do remember telling my mom, "Mom, Uncle Bill says it's going to snow." My mom calmly reminded me that Uncle Bill was gone and we were in Alabama in 1995. It doesn't snow here. Uncle Bill and I got the last laugh when we all woke up the next day and it was snowing in Alabama. Very lightly, but it was there. My great-grandma died in '92. My auntie got the phone call that night. The next morning, my then 3-year-old cousin came out of her room and sleepily mentioned, "Mama, Grandma Rose, the one who just died, visited me last night. She said to tell you that her hip doesn't hurt anymore." I woke up at like 3 a.m. one night and went to fetch some water. My granny, who was sick at the time, was sitting in her favorite rocking chair as I passed by on the way back to bed and we had a friendly little chat. She told me to look after my mom. I thought it was a little odd but said I wouldn't, told her sweet dreams. I only found out that she had passed away at about midnight when I came home from school. My mom and aunt didn't want me here when they carried out the body. I am still not sure if it was just a weirdly vivid dream I had or not. I don't usually dream much. The timing was still pretty weird. I work in an old building. In the 80s or 90s, there was a bus crash with multiple fatalities, and instead of exhuming the bodies on the side of the road, they transported the bus to our building and turned it into a giant freezer. They exhumed the bodies inside. I've been alone in the building and seen kids run past my office door. We all hear shoes squeak on the wax floor often. Basketballs roll around on their own. It's kind of cool. Honestly, it's not really scary. We sort of respect each other's space. My favorite story is the time I spent the night there by myself and I felt especially paranoid. I told the ghosts out loud that I was just going to go to sleep and would prefer to be left alone. I woke up to pee and I heard a girl's voice very distinctly say, "Here he comes, let's leave." I know someone who survived the crash and I'd really like to talk with him about it and maybe bring him in, but I also don't want to be insensitive to his trauma. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.